Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending this webinar with us today, um, for attending the How to Build a Future-Ready HR Strategy webinar. My name is Mai Fuad, and I am your host for today. And I am part of the training production team at Informa Connect Academy. Informa Connect Academy is a global event management company. We are organizing exhibitions, conferences, and training courses across the globe, actually. And we are exists in more than 30 countries across the world. We employ over 14,000 of employees across the world. And our head office is in London, and our main office in the region here in Dubai. And we do have two more offices, one in Saudi Arabia and another one in Egypt, in Cairo. So, welcome to our today's webinar. I'm so excited to meet all of you. We have over 350 people registered in our today's webinar. So, I'm excited to meet all of you and to get engaged with your comments, with your questions, and answer them as much as we can. So, to answer all of your questions and to make sure that we are not missing any important question and to be able to get back to you after this webinar, please make sure that you are dropping all of your questions at the Q&A box and not at the chat box, so that we will be able to pull a report after this webinar. And if we miss any of your questions, we will definitely get back to you with an answer to this question. Please allow me to introduce our trainer and speaker for today, Tom Raftery. So Tom has over 30 years of international HR experience, including more than 15 years in the Middle East. He had worked in senior leadership roles with organizations like ARC International and British Aerospace, and as a consultant as well with firms like Towers Watson and Arthur Anderson. Tom has helped countless organizations with HR strategy, leadership development, organizational design, and change management. With such a background, a very, very rich background, actually, I am sure that you will find his insights both practical and inspiring. So please keep the questions at the end of this webinar. If you want to comment or give any insights, please drop it in the chat box. But if question, please drop it in the Q&A box. So thank you so much for being here today once again. And thank you so much, Tom, for being here today with us. The floor is yours, Tom.
Thank you very much, May. Good morning, everyone. Salam alaikum, or good afternoon for some of you in the UAE. Welcome, one and all. I'm going to be spending the next 45 minutes talking what I call building a sustainable HR future. And I'll come into that. And that's a sustainable HR future for the HR function as it operates, and also for you as practitioners in HR, how you can sustain and grow over time. So let me just start by actually expanding on that. I have over 40 years experience. Yeah, as you can see with the grey hair. I started off in the sort of in basically what was personnel, and I've been through various organisations as May's gone on to do that. I got a BA and an MBA. I actually did an MBA to get out of HR. Once I've spent a lot of time in HR, and I've got the SHRM qualification, CIPD. I've done a lot of training and worked with a lot of companies, both multinationals, many local family businesses in the region, some really good ones, and also consulting companies. So I've spent nearly 20 years now in and around the Middle East. I'm now based in the UK. So I've worked quite extensively, and my honest feeling is, I don't know about you, but I have been, it's getting better, massively frustrated with HR and where it is. If we look at it globally, I think it's become a little bit more progressive. In the region, it's certainly getting more progressive compared to, actually, I first came to the region in Dhahran, Saudi Arabia in 1979, when I was a young lad. Yeah, and it's grown the region is unrecognizable from those days, and HR has improved, but I don't think it's improved as fast. And I get frustrated that a lot of you there, I'm sure you're all working in HR. You have a hard time. Many days you have a hard time. HR gets a lot of criticism. You're unfairly blamed for things. I always just say I've got the bruises and stab wounds for being in HR, and it's probably one of the hardest functions to work because everyone can do it. Everyone's got a view. So I want to share with you something that I've it's been pertinent for me for the last 20 years, how HR needs to reposition itself. And what I want to talk about, that how to be a sustainable HR, is a fundamental change to what HR is doing now. So we'll explore that as we move on. And please, I'm going to be saying a lot of things you might think, oh, I'm not sure about that. There are questions at the end. We'll try and get through them. Even if we don't, I promise you that if questions are answered, give it to Informa, and I will personally get back to those questions. So this is about you to understand and to learn what I'm going to be talking about. Okay, so what are we talking about here? And to an extent, we're talking about HR, how it can sustain itself. People look about sustainability in terms of just the environment side. It's more than that. It's really talking about HR sustaining itself to meet future business needs. Are we ready for the future? Lots of changes at the moment. The global economy, the environment, and particularly the wider social world that we live in. And this is where we're going to be talking about HR needs to broaden its perspective and look from the outside in particular. So they'll also lack some skills and techniques that you as HR professionals will need to develop. I'm sure many of you have gone for the CIPD Sherman, pretty solid training programs. I've been on them, I'm certified by them, but they take very much a functional view. What we want to say, HR needs to take a broader view than that, and I'll explain why, because that will build competencies and also allow you to position your arguments and your recommendations and your initiatives in more of a broader business context. And as part of that, we're going to be introducing a new certificate in sustainable HR. And the aim of this is really to change your mental model of HR, of how you look at it. If you look at HR, people come in because they want to work with people. But the biggest problem in HR is people, because they create all sorts of problems. But also we tend to get caught up in our policies and procedures and our processes and grading structures. And we tend to take a functional view of HR. Whilst the rest of the world, management, other employees on it, their view of HR is quite different to ours. In fact, I've seen a number of studies where how HR rates itself, they rate itself far higher than actually management, senior executives, or whatever. We need to build that bridge, and we need to be getting the managers, the senior people, and our employees rating us more highly than we rate ourselves. That's what sustainable HR is about. So what's happening? Boy, we're living in uncertain times at the moment. Every year I keep thinking it's not going to be as crazy as last year. But as you know, we've got market dynamics. I mean, the present US economy and tariffs, you couldn't make it up, but it is what it is. So there's a lot of unpredictability. Cost of living increased because of COVID, and it's subsequently not going away. It's still a big issue with inflation rising everywhere. And we know that puts pressure on salaries and things like that, which we've all got to deal with. Obviously, the regional conflicts that we can talk about, and I'm just really saddened with what we see, but we've got to live with that. And that sort of could be driving a lot of things that happen both globally and within the region. Obviously, technology and AI. AI is moving so fast, and how's it going to happen? I haven't got all the answers, but all I can say is, we'll share some thoughts, is that we've got to be ready for AI, if not happening already. And some of you will be doing that. Others need to get on that boat. And then these changing demands of sustainability. So there's pressures on the environment, there's pressures on the economy, there's pressures on the social world with problems and issues socially. So that's having a big impact. So as companies, should we bother with that? Should we ignore ourselves from our community, from our country, from our people that we work with? No, we need to be looking beyond that. And then obviously the customer purchasing habits are changing, particularly with the cost of living prices, and that will impact many of you in terms of your business and how well it's doing. So what do we need? I think that you need to be far more flexible, far more proactive, and far more business focused. In HR, we've got our policies and procedures, we've got our performance management, we've got this, and you stick to it. It's your comfort zone. What we want to do is encourage you to take yourself out of that comfort zone, change your mental model, and at least start looking at things differently. So you can at least be flexible, and you can certainly be more proactive and business focused. So some of the challenges we have: there's a shift in powers from workers and managers to owners, shareholders, investors, private owners, things like that. The gig economy, in terms of the workforce, is changing dramatically. You can now have employees who have got 2 or 3 jobs. I got a taxi in Saudi 3 or 4 months ago, and it was a young student who's got a job. He's doing his degree. He's working in, I don't know whether it was one of the burger stores or wherever, and he was driving a car. So that sort of thing is happening even in the region. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is something being very strong in HR, but that's come under a lot of pressure. Why? Because brought under pressure by the right-wing government in America, who think it's all wrong and they're blaming air crashes on diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is, in my mind, crazy. So how does that change? Do we sort of back off from it now or whatever? A lot of companies, I'm quite disappointed where they were waxing lyrically about it, and now they're pushing back. They're saying, oh no, we're just going to leave that. So we need to be addressing that as well. AI and the skills requirements that we need right across the board. So people need to be reskilled, upskilled, and things like that. Then there's a lot of corporate mergers and acquisitions, a lot of cost cutting, so greater control, and this big push of companies, people getting people back to work, which I can understand, getting back to work, but getting back in the office 5 days a week. Big push to that, and many employees are resisting it. So there's lots of uncertainty in the environment at the moment. And then wokeism. To be honest, I don't know what all the argument's about, but it really is dividing opinion. And you're going to be facing that with some senior executives who tend to see the world as a big piece of black, big piece of white, and a little shade of grey. But the reality of the world, it's far different. There's a bigger shade of grey to that. So you're going to have to face these things where, particularly amongst males, it's, yeah, we're going to do this, we're going to do that, rah, 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 sort of scenario. You may face that when you deal with your executives and managers. So it's also then, how does HR sustain itself within that? And how do you grow your career with that sort of background? We'll share some thoughts on that. So where does this sustainability come from? I mean, it first was brought up in the Brundtland Report, Our Common Future. It was a report to the World Commission on Environment and Development. And what it talked about, and this is where it's beyond the environment, sustainability is a practice of meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. We're going to talk how that applies in HR, but just think of that for the minute. We tend to got our head down in HR. We said, are we thinking of how our business and what skills, what competencies should we be developing for the future, not 5-10 years ahead? And also, what's that going to do for our community, our society, our country? These things you're going to be aware of. So the concept of sustainability focuses on responsible resource use, waste reduction, and the preservation of ecosystems and natural resources for future generations. The same applies within our work environment. Everything that we do, are we utilizing our resources properly, effectively? Our biggest part in HR is our manpower, and often it's the largest cost. Are we doing things the right way? So looking at things with a sort of a sustainable mindset will change your perception on what needs to be done. So if you look at this from this report, we're talking about HR that incorporates the principle of sustainability into HR. We've got to start looking at that and say how we can take sustainability and apply it to HR to meet the needs of the present. That's doing what stakeholders need now. And again, let's not use the site. We want to do all this exciting different stuff. Are we delivering value? Are we delivering added value in everything that we do? And do we question if we're actually doing the right thing? So this is where you need to be more proactive in questioning what you're doing without compromising the ability of future generations, right? We tend to be focused on doing things as a service reminder to stakeholders on outputs or outcomes, outputs or results. But what we've been talking about sustainability is what's the outcome? Why are you doing that in HR? So just look at something you're actually doing at the moment, maybe an initiative. Why are you doing it? What do you want to achieve by that? And it may be reducing turnover or whatever, but what's the ultimate outcome? Why are you reducing turnover? What's the impact of that? So what we want to do with sustainable HR is to think broader than just the results that you want and why you're achieving that, because that will ensure that you're going in the right way. And then the last part, to meet their own needs. So this is anticipating and adapting to new needs and changing stakeholder needs. So, there's this thing where you've got to be proactive. HR, we've got to be a lot more proactive. We've got to be thinking what's going to happen in the business in 5 or 10 years' time. Don't leave that to the CEO or to the finance director or the commercial. You need to be thinking of that as well. Even if you're a HR assistant, you need to be thinking of that. So when we look at the future and the gap between sustainability, a recent survey by Deloitte looked at the impact of sustainability on organizations, how well they were doing. So they need to understand how people recognize that they need to be doing more in organizations on sustainability to drive progress, and outcomes are important to the organ. 84% said that. But the reality is, organizations that were doing this are actually applying the elements of sustainability to driving their program. It was only 21%. So there's a big gap there in terms of what's happening. So the other part we're going to be looking at sustainability is measures. One thing about this program, which we'll talk about in a minute, there is going to be lots of measures. In HR, for me, the real enlightening thing, and the thing I'm very positive about HR, it was to use far more analytics to actually understand what's happening and looking at it over time. It's a key thing we're going to be covering. But also we need to be measuring ourselves against external factors as well. So the first part is positioning HR using the lens of sustainability. We're going to talk about lens a lot, because lens is about how we look at things. At the moment, I fear that HR tends to look through the lens of HR. Why do we look through the lens of the commercial department, lens of the finance department, lens of sustainability, lens of the environment, lens of other things like, for example, one of the things we're going to be using is the UN Sustainable Development Goals, USDGs. My last corporate role at ARC, we measured ourselves against these goals right across the board. So I was the VP HR for the international division in Dubai, and we had to measure ourselves against this and report back to the UN. We got a lot of recognition for that, but also measuring ourselves against ECG measures: environment, governance, social. So these are the things that are quite different. Maybe you don't even look at them now, but at least can I ask you, have a look at these, look at them and say, do you think your company can do it? They're also positioning HR the lens of systems to continually improve that. And ISO has changed immensely. It's a lot more progressive now, and a lot more measures, and and a lot more guidance there. And they can give you measures on how well you're doing against those. And a lot of companies get ISO certification because it helps them in their branding. And finally, positioning against the lens of measurement. The IFRS, is the International Financial Reporting Standards, have now got quite a number of HR standards that we've got to report to. And more big companies, not just the multinationals, some of the other big run businesses in the region will also be looking to measure themselves against these standards. So measurement is going to be crucial for the future. Where are you now against any of these? You may not be anywhere, but at least you need to start thinking about that. So what we do going through this program, we look at key links. So every module we have is aligned with certain the UN SDGs. So, for example, it's got gender equality, reduce sustainable cities and communities, partnerships to achieving goals. If you look at these, many of these can apply to companies. Not all of them, but many can apply to companies. Then we've got then ISO standards. And that has grown massively over the past 30 years. So, and we measure ourselves against ISO standards. And how well are we doing that? And sometimes we only pay lip service to it. I must admit, the early days when I was used to ISO audits, I thought, what's all this about? It's about ticking boxes. ISO has improved dramatically. They now want evidence, and it's not just about ticking boxes. And they show you ways to improve, and things like that. So it's a really important measure of how well we're doing. So the sustainable HR future is basically focus on long-term value creation, value capture. How many things you do in HR? Oh, we just deal with this problem. It's short-term reaction. It's short-term reaction. It's not really adding value because maybe it's not part of an overall strategic view of where the business is going, and maybe HR in many cases are not involved in that overall vision and strategy. Thankfully, more and more are getting involved. And the one thing I always say, and I worked with a lot of HR people in the region and coached a lot of HR people, be nosy. If you're not involved in the strategy, go and find out. Go and put your nose in. And then you've got to start thinking, how does HR add value? It's not by having a policy and procedure manual. It's not by having performance management framework or even a grade structure. It's beyond that. We'll show you how that happens. Also, we look at various stakeholders. At the past in HR, we tend to look at the CEO, the commercial director, maybe the board, but it's far higher than that. We've looked about all these standards and how to measure again, but we'll also look at what are we doing for our community, what are we doing for our society, what are we doing for governments are now getting more, particularly in the region, more involved in understanding what you're doing. Are you delivering to those stakeholders? So you've got to change your mental model of how you look at HR from a functional perspective into multiple stakeholders and how you address those. And we're going to be focused on outcomes. It's not about tasks and outputs, it's outcomes. Why are you measuring that? What do you want to achieve? I did a lot of work on objectives and KPIs and things like that. And one of the things people always write, they like to measure their tasks because it's easier. And measuring things in HR are a lot more complex. So that means you've got to really think, why are we doing? What do we want to achieve? What is the ultimate outcome? And then work back from that to the measures that you need. I'll give you examples of that. We're going to have people-focused business solutions. Not just we've got to do that because it's the right thing, and we know that's the right thing to do to engage people, etc., etc. But there's got to be a business side to it. And one of the things that we're going to be discovering is, can you show the financial impact or the business impact of what you do in HR? Can you? Something I've worked on for the last 20 years is doing that. And the reason I did my MBA is because I learned how to do that. I remember my professor of accounting, I did my MBA at Warwick. First slide he ever showed on a seminar, but he showed a balance sheet and he said, why lie when the truth is so accommodating? Finance is an art, it's not a science. And boy, did I wake up. And I was able to use that a lot to show the financial impact of HR. And that gets your attention because it's about fulus, right? At the end of the day, show me the money and they'll start saying, hang on a minute, what did you say there? I remember I've had conversations. What? HR can do what? And they don't think of it that way. That is the reason, unless you change your perspective, you can't help others to do that. See around corners, be nimble, proactive. What's going to happen in your business the next year, next 5 years? What are you doing reading around your business? Not just how your business is doing, well, how the industry is doing, how the country is doing, economically and financially. You need to be aware of that. Keep up influencing skills. I always thought in my early days, oh, people judge me by what I do. Nah, I do. They'd like to see some of that, but a lot of it is about your influencing skills. I've seen people who are not the best workers, or how the hell did they get in that position? Because they've got good influencing skills, and we're going to talk about how that's critically important. If you get one thing away from here, look at how you can improve your influencing skills. And be the go-to executive. The one where the CEO wants to come into your office and talk to you, or the manager, or whatever. So that's important. And I learned from an old colleague of mine I used to work with many years ago in consulting. I used to work for Merck many, many years ago, an American guy. He used to say, open your mind to the possibilities. And that's what I want you to think about. There are many things that can be done in HR differently to what you're doing now. So what does sustainable HR look like? Obviously, care for employees, environment, long-term view, profitability to everything we've got to do. You're not going to do things because it's going to increase cost. You're going to, is there a likely return for that? That's the way you've got to be thinking in HR. If I want to do X, what do I want to achieve? What's the outcome? And what business or financial impact will that have? Obviously, employee participation and development. And you know what? I don't think there's enough participation in the region. We tend to do things to people because we know we know what people want. Do you ask them? When you do a grade and salary structure review, do you run some workshops to ask people's view on their pay levels? You don't do that because everyone's going to want a salary increase. Well, yeah, I'm sure that will happen. But at least listening to them, giving employees the feeling that they're being listened to is really important to their participation. External partnerships with communities. What are you doing for your community as a company? What are you doing for various various charities or local institutions or whatever? I think there's a key role there that often we don't do in HR. Obviously, compliance with labour law, employee cooperation, and above all, fairness and equity. And that's a big challenge because everyone thinks they're not played fairly. I know that's an ongoing point. Looking at some of the HR trends, and I recently went to do some research on this. Gartner do a lot of work on HR trends. There are going to be similar patterns here. Leadership, management development, organisation culture, workforce planning, which I think is absolutely critical. I think we need to be doing more on that. Change management and HR technology, not surprisingly. Then SHRM, skills over degrees. Yeah, it's a big thing now. People are not pushing that you have to have degrees. And that's a big change in the region. Everyone's got to have a degree. You want to be a driver, you're going to have a degree. Yeah, I think it's more about skills now. Because what does a degree tell you? Someone sat down for 3 years and read some books. It's about your skills, capabilities, and competencies, and it's evolving those skills and hiring workforces, and it's more flexible now. You don't employ people full time. There's various ways you can do that. We talk about the workforce dynamic and the workforce continuum, which is changing dramatically. People analytics, talked about that. The rise of incivility. Check this out, and it seems to be quite common in the States. I haven't seen too much of it elsewhere, but this is people just being rude, not being very nice at work, a lot of tension. So that's probably a symptom of a lot of stress that people are under. Cost of living, whatever, or the demands of the company on people. Benefits of financial wellness, sorry. We're doing a big section on well-being, and we'll cover that as well. AI, particularly on talent strategy, and lots of uses there that we'll share. And then the post-election regulatory shift. So again, SHRM is an American HR organization. So with the new Republican administration, there's a move away from deregulation on many things. So a lot of controls there are going to be whittled down. The CIPD, a member of both SHRM and the CIPD. Obviously, cost of living, we talked about role of AI, redundancies and restructuring. A lot of that's happening. Unemployment is starting to increase, not just in the UK, elsewhere across Europe. Legislation is changing. They're bringing in formal legislation now to protect employees here. Culture is key. We talked about an organisation culture that was mentioned before by Gartner. And authenticity and transparency are a necessity. I think we need to be far more open in HR. We're very secretive. And don't tell everyone that. But you know what? They make it up. The blah blah that goes on in the region, particularly, is 10 times worse than the reality. Yeah, but we don't want to share more. And then AI again in HR. So what we're going to be talking about here is challenging mental models. A mental model is how we look at the world. That influences our behavior. Because of that behavior, we go to achieve certain things, and that reinforces our mental model. So this is work first started by Senge back in the late 80s, Peter Senge. And basically, until you change your model, you're not going to change your behavior, and you're not going to change the results. So you still look at HR as policies, procedures, blah, blah, blah. You're going to get what you got. If you start looking at HR, how do we add value? How do we contribute to business results? What's our financial impact? How do we address various stakeholder views? You're not going to change your behavior. And that means you don't change your behavior. But if you do that, you'll change your behavior. Start looking at things differently. You'll start challenging more, which we need. But you're going to challenge in a way where you're going to show evidence and where you're going to show financial and economic impact. So you change the result. So ultimately, don't look at HR from just a HR function. Look at HR from a global perspective of various stakeholders. Okay, so we need to change. We need to look at social, environmental, economic, regulation, sustainability, as well as people perspective. You're going, oh God, Tom, I've got a million things to do. How the hell am I supposed to do this? Yes, you can do it. Take some time out. In the end, you just make sure that you're aware of what's happening around these issues related to your company and where you are, and to your community and your society. You've got to you've got to keep ahead of this. And I know you've got millions of balls in the air, but that's the small stuff. This is the big stuff. And remember, you've got to meet the various needs of a broader range of shareholders. That's important. So part of this is leading up to a new advanced certificate in sustainable HR. This is something that Informer asked me. God, I've been working on and off with them now for 25 years, and worked with Brad Boyson, ex-head of SHRM for Africa, the Middle East, and India, and putting together a completely new program, which covers all the main areas of HR, but gives you a different perspective. It helps you to change your mental model on this. So we look at four main areas: leadership, well-being, innovation, and legal. Within that, we're going to be looking like talent, rewards, learning, and performance. That's the sort of the graphic showing all the areas that we're going to be covering. Now, the whole program, and by the way, I'll say this again, you don't need to go through the whole program. It's made up of four courses, of which there are 8 modules. You don't need to go through all of this, but you can go into certain areas and say, right, I want to look at this because it's one of my core areas. I'd like a different view of that rather than go through like rewards and compensation. Here's how you do a grading structure. Here's how you manage your bonus scheme. Here's how you do salary increases. We'll cover that, but from a different perspective. Again, we're changing the mental model. So you can strengthen an area you want, or go into a new area that you haven't done any work for before. And you need to be building that sort of knowledge. So, build your core strengths in HR and look at it differently. So let's look at each of the certificates. The first one is HR Leadership and Wellbeing. This is the first part, the first 4 courses, where we're talking about sustainable leadership and workforce relations and wellness. Okay, so what are we going to be talking about? Obviously, strategy development, impact of culture and communication, financial, non-financial sustainability. And we're going to be talking about the financial side and how you can use that financial side to build your business case. As a section in our business case. Looking at metrics for decision making. So you've got your evidence, how to get the evidence, how to measure that, and how to build it in helping you to make decisions and support you in those decisions. Looking at employee well-being and engagement, which is really a big growth in this over the last 4 or 5 years. How to get a well-being strategy together and improve engagement. Going to talk about risk management. That's often not covered in HR courses, but we do need to manage risk and we need to be aware of that. That's the reason we need to be proactive. Then we're talking about employee relations to employee experience. It's more about, rather than employee relations, more about employee experience. And then looking at HR business part and consulting approach, which many of you probably do, and that's great. I'm not sure all of you are doing it the right way. And I'm not sure all of you can naturally do the consulting approach. I've been on both sides, and it's not natural to me say, I'm suddenly a consultant. It's quite a different concept, and we'll help you address that. And finally, coaching and mentoring, something I think everyone should be doing these days because it's an excellent way of communicating. So what do you want to build? What do you want to get out of it? Build your leadership strategic skills, financial confidence. That's critically important. Business case mindset. I want to use this initiative. What's the financial business impact? Consulting skills, what it is to be a consultant. And it's not that easy, right? Influencing coaching skills, absolutely critical. I talked about that earlier. Help to bring your personal credibility and personal confidence. I've coached a lot of people, executives, but also a lot of HR people. And one thing I've found is that we get blamed for a lot of things. We get hit at people blame us and they're quite negative to HR. So it has a big impact on credibility and confidence. And part of this program is building that credibility and because that's really important. Once you have that and you sustain it and you can show using financial competence business case how you do that, that's really effective. The second part, we're going to be looking at HR talent management and learning and development management. So we're going to be at proactive workforce planning, absolutely critical. If you don't have proactive workforce planning, you're not very good at HR, I'll tell you that now. You need to be looking not just what your needs are for your workforce this year, you need to be looking 5 years ahead. Do you have someone working on that, or is it just one individual doing it as part of another job they're doing? Maybe it's someone in recruitment who's doing it for you. You need someone full-time. There's a huge amount of work to be done there, and it's one area that frustrates me. I still don't see a lot of companies putting the investment into that. Maybe we look at job design, change jobs, not just job description, but change the way we work. And part of that is going to be a lot of metrics we're going to be covering in workforce management. Whole new look there on recruitment and retention, giving you a new perspective. Think differently rather than just filling slots. You need to talk about why you're losing people and how you need to develop your people. Part of your workforce planning. Are you doing enough to develop and progress your people? We're going to talk about building a different learning model, a learning model where people are involved, where people actually have a decision over that, and where you measure that to see they're actually delivering. So, for example, we're going to put moving from competence to capabilities. So, when you put someone on a learning and development intervention, what do you want them to do with that? And then how do you measure that they're actually doing it? Something that's not really done in L&D, because, well, put someone on a course, I put someone on a project, whatever. Did you follow through to see whether what they learned, what their improvement in capabilities, and how they applied it? Again, there's going to be a lot of look on metrics. In each of the courses, we'll talk about that. Looking at technology and learning as well, and building the case for investing in people. We'll share that. So, what you want to get at is you build your workforce planning skills, ability to attract and retain people, give you a different perspective how to do that. We'll also tell you how to work on reputation management, critical part of recruitment. People these to get so much access to information on companies they're going to. It's taking you aware how to build that. Refresh on L&D knowledge and what's happening, latest things, L&D knowledge and design work, and build confidence in technology and learning. It's changing so much. And one thing we encourage is try things out, try it small. Don't go for the big, the big launch or whatever. Must move on a bit. So we've got performance and reward. We're covering the actual things there on compensation and benefits and performance management. So we're going to start helping you to think about the role of systems thinking, which is a different way of looking at problems and issues. We're going to include that, particularly when you look at performance and reward issues, as well as other parts of HR. Look at performance management and how you need to change that. And then there's going to be lots of measures on performance metrics and decision making. Are you getting the biggest bang of your book out of your pay, for example? How are you measuring performance? What impact's that having? So we're going to share a lot on that. It comes down to people analytics. We'll talk about, again, the compensation philosophy and reward, metrics, tools, benefits, and how to optimize those. We don't tend to think about benefits, and I don't think your employees do. Oh, benefits, they don't see it. It's all about falloose. The answer to everything is falloose. Wajid falloose even. Wouldn't it be great? So we'll tell how you can optimize that. And finally, balancing fairness, equity, and value, and pushing that thought across, because you're in the middle trying to balance everything. Once manager saying, well, I would have given that increase, but HR said no. That's some great manager, isn't it? And then you get the blame. We've got to help you to address those issues. So therefore, what you build, system thinking knowledge, which we'll share with you, building confidence in decision making using data. So you've got to do more of that, and that's building your people analytics capability, building compensation skills, and also how to optimize benefits. I did a lot of work on flexible benefits when I was in the UK, and it's something that various companies have tried but haven't really made much progress, but we'll sort of expand on that and how you can start marketing your benefits far more effectively. And obviously job negotiation skills, which we tend not to. You just give the job offer and whatever, but we'll give you some tools and techniques on there. And finally, another one is HR innovation and government, often not covered in many of the standard courses, or it's quite small. We're going to be talking about HR needs to be more innovative and how you do that, and then talking about governance governance, not just at board level, but legal governance and other areas and ethics and things like that. So obviously we'll talk about OD and change management, quality and knowledge management, a key part of that. We can learn a lot from quality management tools and techniques, and particularly ISO, as we talked about earlier. How HR innovation, how do you innovate? So talk about design thinking, agile management, and how that applies in HR. And also, how do you manage the future of work? It's changing so fast. Who would have thought a couple of years ago we'd have people working from home 2 or 3 days a week? It's still not fully taken up in the region, but many companies have. Talk about ethics and governance and then the legal frameworks of that, but also covering international HR, which has changed dramatically from when I first came to the Middle East. I was an expat. You don't often hear that now. It's quite changed dramatically. People are brought in on more of a local salary. But obviously, if you're working more globally, you need to be aware of how expatriates are still being used globally. Then we'll talk about audits. And one key part, HR in the government sector and DOO, Department of One. Many people, a large majority of HR people are on their own in a Department of One in a company, and how do you manage that? So this is, again, another key areas that you don't often get in HR courses. So I'll build your knowledge, OD and change, particularly confidence in QMS and knowledge management, how you use some of the tools that they use there. Build the confidence to innovate, to try things out, to particularly starting small to see if things work. Building your knowledge on ethics and governance and becoming very strong at board level now right across the region as it is globally. Understand legal principles there, not going into the details of the labour law, but some legal principles that help you to understand the labour law, and then obviously building your knowledge of international HR capability. So about another 5 or 6 minutes here, we've got to think a mental model of HR. So if you look at what we're covering in this programme, what we cover all sustainable leadership, workforce relations, well-being, the 4 main courses. But within all that, there's going to be a lot of measuring on all of these areas. So typically, you've got your issues and inputs. That means you then carry out activities. Oh, we've got a problem here, so you do X or Y. And then you do that because you want an output, outcome. But often we tend to look at a result, right, which might not be what you want to achieve. So we're going to look at this differently and help you to think through that. So what we're going to do now, say for example, recruitment problems, skill shortage, employee engagement, they're the issues. So therefore you look at metrics, right? Recruitment yields, budget allocated for training or investment in engagement programs. So okay, there's some of the metrics. What's that showing? So that means we need to look at our recruitment challenge, or we've got to look at the number of participants we have on training, or we need to look at our engagement survey and how it's conducted. So the output of that is we could get numbers of quality candidates, improve results in training, participation rate in surveys, great. So what? What's that really doing? You're just measuring yourself against what you're doing. But the outcome, obviously, number of quality candidates, you're using the quality higher performance new recruits. So that should increase your number of high potentials, which will have an impact on the business. Improvement of job performance post-training. So training is measured once they get back to the workplace, and you see, actually their performance is improved. You can actually quantify that in financial terms. And obviously employee engagement scores, when you look at against, for example, customer scores, customer engagement scores, or sales or whatever, you start to see patterns within that. So we're looking at outcomes. So each module is 2 days. So each course, there are 2 modules, so it's total of 4 days, 2 days each. There are case studies in there, real business situations, and a lot of them are regional. Both Brad and myself, between us, have probably worked in the region 35 years. So we've got a lot of war stories, but practical situations that you'll be taken through and you can try out. There's an assessment, multiple choice questions at the end of the course. Pass rate 70, and you're allowed to retake. Again, for me, the most important part is what are you going to do with what you've learned. But this is more to reinforce the learning. And the metrics for each module will be shared and discussed. So all the metrics we're going to be doing, we will be given to you as well. So each course, we have a whole range of metrics for that. And remember what I said, you can pick and choose, building on your core competency area or learning a new one. You've got the choice. You don't have to take the whole lot, although you can do, and you will get certificates for that. So the new value proposition, we cover areas that often other courses don't cover. particularly sustainable leadership development, influencing skills, recruitment ethics and professionalism, reputation management, informal learning. Some other areas, other things we talk about, system thinking, biases and maturity, a key part of what we do in HR, data management and security, a critical area that HR needs to be on top of. Then looking at, as we've talked about, ethics and government, legal principles, and then looking at HR in the government sector and HR and Department of One. Really interesting. It doesn't go into a lot of detail, but it gives you a view, if you're in the government sector, what you need to be looking at, or if you're moving into the government sector, what you need to be aware of, as well as some of the things you've got to be aware of when you go into the department and you're running HR either on your own or with one or two people. So things to look at: innovation, design thinking, disruptions and transformations, how to work with an environment where it's like that, particularly around the future of work. And what we're going to be doing through the whole program is using our HR maturity model, which you can then assess around many of the courses that we're running, how mature you are and where you rank in a maturity model. So typically what we call innocence to excellence, and where you fall in those and what you need to do to get to the next level. So our style is ratio of talk to listen. So a lot of group discussions, a lot of them, and lots of activities where you're going to be when you're working on together. We emphasize practical impact, not just the theory. So it's about the reality. How does it work in reality? As I said, 1 to 3 real-world regional case studies, and not a Western export. It's been developed as a universal program, but it's been developed by people who've spent a lot of time in the region. So it is a universal program. We can run this anywhere in the world, but particularly here for the region, a lot of the case studies will be regional. So covers a significant amount of content all related to HR. Does not deep dive into any one area of specialization, but at least it gives you a view there, and it helps you to think differently about the area of specialization. So it gives you a different perspective that HR needs to address. As you said, cover topics not covered in other HR courses, and we debated this. Suitable for fresh graduates. Some people thought, well, it's not suitable for fresh graduates. You need a number of years' experience. I disagree. When we first started on this, I was saying, no, you don't fresh graduates. But you know what? When we start in HR, we're indoctrinated, whether it's SHRM, CIPD, HRCI, for 4 or 5 years, and that's the way we think of things. If we get fresh graduates first, we're going to start saying, you're going to need to start thinking differently about HR. We're going to get them a more flexible mental model. So when they do go into the more detailed training of HR, they'll be open to challenge and to question and see how that would apply. So, so it's suitable for most people looking at HR. Okay, went over a little bit there. Thank you. Any
Well,
questions?
thank you so much, Tom, for this session. Is really amazing, and it looks like is a very interesting program, actually.
Mm.
So, yeah, we have received some of the questions, and I would like to start with the first question that I really personally are interested to hear the answer from you. So, Hassan Tirmizi has asked you, Tom, how can HR balance AI adoption with long-term sustainability?
Okay. For me, you have to take on board AI. You have to. And because it will play a role, AI can be very useful in reducing a lot of the admin stuff that you're doing. Because if you're going to be sustainable, right, you have to add more value. So you have to be more tactical and strategic. So you need to get the AI to look at a lot of the small stuff we get involved in. Right, AI can address a lot of those issues. It can speed up processes. It can speed up, your recruitment process, your learning and development process. It can speed a lot of that up. And you've really got to open your mind to that. Word of caution, though, is be careful with everyone's running out with AI systems at the moment. Make sure you do your research right, test it out thoroughly, and be really careful of biases depending on who built the AI system you're talking about. But for me, if you're going to be sustainable, you have to reduce the huge amount of admin work that we do at the moment. AI can do a huge amount to take that load off us, whilst ensuring accuracy and responsiveness and things like this. So that will give it. If you're going to be sustainable, you have to get on board with AI. If I was in HR now, I'm advising in HR. As a corporate, I'd be talking to to your IT people, what AI systems can we use and whatever. It's really important.
Okay, interesting. Another question, what is the length of the course and what is the cost of the course and the cost of the certification? I
No,
believe
no.
that you can, if you can just show the next slide, Tom, where they can scan the QR code so that they can
Oh yeah, sorry.
reach out to our sales team, and then they will be able to give you
Ah,
all the full
there we,
details.
there we
Yeah,
are. Sorry, I forgot. I forgot the last one.
no
Thank you.
worries.
Yeah, yeah. If you do that, and likewise, if you read that and you look at the course and you've got any questions related, I'm going to be running all of these certificates. If you've got any questions whatsoever that you don't ask now, maybe you think about later today or tomorrow, whatever, please contact Informa through this, and they will pass the questions to me, and I'll definitely get back to you.
Of course. So Shelly was asking about the recording. The recording is going to be available after the session and even the presentation. We are going to send both the recording and the PPT after the session to all of the registered list. So please feel free to go through the recording once again because they arrived late to the session and they wanted to go through it. Um, so they were asking also about Tahir was asking about the accreditation. Is this course accredited from SHRM or CRPD or any other association?
Not really. No, this is Informa's course. Although I know you are looking at that. But for me, as I said earlier, what is it? Is it qualification or is it a capability? This course is about building capabilities. Well, actually, yeah, accreditation is important, and I'm not belittling that. But for me, the most important part is what you learn from this and what you take away and what do you do with it. Because if you don't actually apply any, at least one or two things that you've learned in the program, why are you doing it? We talk about outcomes. You're doing it because you want to build knowledge in a certain area, you want to be in confidence, or you know that you've got certain issues in the organization that you'd like to build that, so you'll be able to do something with it. So, whilst there's no accreditation at the moment, I can guarantee you'll come away with capabilities. And Brad and myself are the ones who to share all our knowledge with you. You don't capture that in a degree. You don't catch that in a certification. You capture that by sharing ideas, sharing views, sharing perceptions of how you're going to deal with it. Particularly, it's highly participative, so we need to know the challenges you're facing and how we would help you to address those. In many ways, a lot of the work I do is free consulting, and I'm not
Yeah.
selling that thing. In fact, I always say give consultants a hard time, but how you need to be addressing that within your organization. A lot of my discussions in training is around those areas. But
So
unfortunately,
ma-
at this stage, there's no accreditation. Is that
yeah.
correct?
Yeah. For that is bringing us to the next question, actually, Tom. Iman is asking for people who doesn't have enough experience, where can we learn about real life cases while studying the course? For example, I'm between jobs. How can I apply what I am learning until I land a job?
Okay. So how can you apply what you're learning? Sorry, I just need the context of it. So you're saying if you go on any of these programs, you're saying how can you apply that learning?
I feel like, it's about the dilemma between the which came first, the egg or the chicken. So
Yeah. Listen,
it's like I believe sorry, allow me to just say something because like from my experience here as a career coach. So it's really very important for you to upskill yourself with like engaging in many of the courses, acquiring certifications and certificates and knowledge in order to be able to get a job. And then you will be able to apply this knowledge. Sorry, Tom, it was just
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah,
But
it was very
but
interesting for me.
yeah, but it's also important that you understand how to address the situations. as we said, there's going to be lots of case studies, and all the training I do is I say to people, "What challenges you've got at the moment? Let's share what you've got. Let's work through solutions ourselves." Because to a certain extent, it's you've got a lot of experience. I've seen where things work. I've seen where things didn't work, particularly in the region. That cultural context is really important. So I think it's about trying things out. So as you go through the course, you'll learn things. And don't forget, it's building your confidence. In particular, you're going to be going for interviews. You're going to talk with a level of confidence, saying, I've invested in programs here with senior HR people, probably far more senior than you. And I don't like to blow my own trumpet, but yeah, I've probably forgotten more than what most people know. Because I've had 40 years, I've seen where things work and where they don't work. In particular, I've seen things how they work in the region, along with other colleagues as well. So this has not been done on its own. It's worked with Brad and others. So that collective knowledge we're going to be sharing with you and giving you that different perspective. What you'll find is you can give a refreshing perspective to your new employer or the person that you're interviewing and say, "Oh, that is a different way of looking at things." That would
Yeah,
be attractive.
yeah. Another question from Ali. How can I build and increase knowledge of AI in HR? What is the right path and resources to best practice?
Okay. First of all, I don't like the word best practice. Sorry about that, because what is best practice? It's moving so fast at the moment. You can't sit down and say that is best practice. I think what you've got to do, and what I've done, I mean, I got experience with AI, not really, but I understand AI. I understand how it works. I understand there's lots of programs out there and systems that you can do. But what AI does, it simplifies everything. Going on from what I said earlier, so AI is very good at taking some of the heavy analysis work. And we talked about metrics, ideal for metrics, because it's able to very, very quickly look at a whole range of information and come up with conclusions on it. So it's very powerful. I think there are many programs, and I think the only thing that's holding you back about what AI can do is yourself. Open your mind to the possibilities. Why look for other people to tell you what AI can do? AI can do what they're worried about at the moment, can do literally anything. Just play on ChatGPT, which I'm sure many of you have done, and start asking questions. It starts giving you a perspective. So the only thing to stop you how to use AI in HR is yourself, your mental model. So if you change your mental model, say, AI can do anything around here, around HR, look at it, but be cautious. Be cautious because AI is one and zero. It's a computer. And do one and zero. That's what the code is.
Mm,
So it'll give you very functional. At the moment, it doesn't show emotion, although they're talking that will happen, and and it doesn't show fear. It doesn't show all the classical characteristics of a human that we have to deal with. All the consequences of anything we do has an emotional impact, as we know.
mm,
Um, so, when I said to open your mind to the possibilities, that applies to AI and HR. So the only thing holding you back is your mental model. If you open up your mental model, open up to the possibilities, just say, well, what area of HR needs to be improved? Just look at how AI can do that. It's a bit like trying to eat an elephant. it's very difficult and not very good for the ingestion. But so really, you've got to look at what your problems are and say how AI can deal with that, and then not searching on that. Looking at AI and HR can get really big, and so you've got
yeah,
to be
yeah.
focused.
Just to elaborate more on this, Ali, we will be able, like Informa is producing very strong courses for HR and for L&D. So there are two courses that we provide in English and in Arabic for HR for AI for HR professionals and AI for L&D. Both programs are really very strong programs, and they kind of grabbing the tools, information on how to deal with these tools from an HR point of view and needs actually. So if you are interested, also you can scan the QR code and you can get in touch with our sales team who will be able to give you the full details, or you can of course, go to our website, download the brochure, and you will be able to understand the content of the course and how it will help HR professionals to improve their abilities and knowledge on AI. Um, Another question, say, hi, how can I be good? How can I be a good OD in HR? Note, I'm a fresh graduate.
How can you be good at OD? Um, how can you be good at OD? OD.
Actually, I believe like they need to know from where to start actually,
Okay,
because they are fresh graduate.
okay. It's like anything. As you fresh guy, you start learning. So there are a number of good publications on OD, organization design, organization development. What does that mean? So it's about how an organization is structured, the various structures typically you get with with an organization. You just start learning. If you want some books on OD, if you drop me a note, there's one or two I can't think of at the moment, but actually it's probably in my bookshelf at the back of me somewhere there that I could go to. But OD is not just about structure; it's about how you work within that structure, what's and elements of culture, communication, etc. within that. So it's a really complex area, and there are huge amounts of books and research on OD. So really, you've got to start looking at, start small. What is OD? How does it work? And what's HR's role in OD as well? So start your research. I can't. There's no simple answer to it.
Okay. So I believe we came to the end of this webinar. Unfortunately, it was a very short time with you, Tom, as
Okay.
always. Thank you so much for the your insights today. It was really valuable. And for everyone who dropped us questions and unfortunately didn't have the time to answer your questions, please make sure that we will come back to you with answers from Tom directly to you. We will reply to your email addresses. And so please wait for our email. If you still don't have anything from us, just please drop us an email using these emails, and our sales team will make sure to get the answers for you. Thank you so much for attending our webinar today and looking forward to meet you again in our upcoming webinars and in our upcoming courses. Thank you for attending. Thank you so much, Tom, for your time
Okay.
today.
All the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
What if you and your team can be even more? Even more informed, competitive, accomplished, even more successful? With programs designed to inspire and empower everyone to become even more. Introducing Informa Connect Academy. With hundreds of global, digital, and in-person training courses led by world-renowned industry experts. Reimagining learning experiences for even more unlocked potential. Informa Connect Academy, available at informaconnect.com/academy.